Hi, everyone. I am so excited to be joining you again for another AFT Book Club event. I believe this is our fourth, and we've got a couple more coming up. My name is Kelly Booz. I'm the proud director of our AFT Share My Lesson website, and this AFT Book Club is in partnership between the AFT, Albert Schenker Institute, and obviously Share My Lesson. I am going to show a quick housekeeping video so you know how to engage with us during this book club event. I know some of you are coming to us, and this is an old hat for you to be joining us today, and thank you for rejoining us. We want you to use that group chat. We want you to let us know what you're thinking. We want you to send lots of hearts and thumbs up and various emojis as we go, so let me show you how to do that.
Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Kelly Booz, and I'm the director of the American Federation of Teachers Share My Lesson. Before we begin, I want to go over a few housekeeping tips to keep in mind during this presentation. We want this webinar to be interactive and engaging. At the bottom of your audience console are multiple widgets that we will use throughout the webinar to interact with you. These include the group chat widget. Please open the group chat and tell us who you are and where you are tuning in from. We will use the chat widget throughout the webinar. Feel free to share your ideas with other participants and presenters. If you have any questions, you can use the Q&A widget to submit your questions to your presenters. We'll facilitate a question and answer session at the end of this webinar. If you have any technical issues, send your technical questions through the Q&A widget, and we will respond to you promptly. The most common issue that you might experience is your audio might go out or your screen might freeze. If that happens, just refresh your browser. A copy of the presentation slide deck and any additional materials are available in the resource list in the top left of your screen. Now, a number of you are here to get professional development credit for your participation. To access a PDF for your webinar participation, you must attend at least 35 minutes of this presentation and respond to at least 2 poll questions that are going to pop up on your screen throughout the webinar. If you miss a poll question, that's okay. You can always come back into the platform and complete a poll at a later date. We'll send you an email approximately 1 hour after the live event with a link to access this webinar on demand. Your certificate is available up to a year after your webinar. Follow your district's policies to determine if your webinar participation will be accepted for professional development credit. In addition to today's webinar, we have hundreds of webinars available on demand on Share My Lesson. All of those webinars are available with professional development credit. You can access those webinars at sharemylesson.com/webinars. Now let's turn it back over to your moderator, who will put up a sample poll question for you to try.
From all of us at Share My Lesson, thank you for joining us today. Enjoy your webinar.
Okay, welcome back. I'm putting up our first poll question. What is your preferred way to read? Are you still physical books? That's the way you do it. Digital books or audio books? I guess digital books, I should say, like using a Kindle or some other device, or audio books. I probably should have changed this poll question so you can do multiple choice, because I feel like I do a variety of these different options with the way that I consume my books. So if you can go ahead and respond to that, and we will have some other poll questions as we go through this. And remember, as we're going, to submit any questions that you may have for our author today in the Q&A widget at the bottom of your screen. We will be watching the attendee chat as well as we go through this. And I'm going to put back on, when we're done with this poll question, a way for you to potentially win, the book that we are featuring tonight from Edwidge, Brother, I'm Dying. So there's a sweepstakes with extra bonus points for you to win one of 50 books. So please take advantage of that option. All right, I will say that I have left the physical book world. Not completely, but I do love my Kindle, largely because I can just put it in one hand and late at night, and has a light on it, and so that way I don't keep my husband up at nighttime when I'm still reading. Occasionally he comes and says, "You need to turn it off," but that is one way that I can do it. Okay, looks like we've got a lot of physical book readers. Randy, are you a physical book reader, digital or audio?
I just did the survey. I am a physical book reader.
Good for you. Good for you. All right, so without further ado, I'm going to put the slide back up so that way I hope that folks take advantage of trying to win one of Edwidge's books. I'm going to turn this over to Randi Weingarten, president of the AFT, and really the brainchild behind our AFT book club. Again, this is our 4th one. We still have 2 more coming for the rest of the school year, and then we're going to kick back off in the fall for another series, and we're excited about some of the authors that we're lining up for that. So stay tuned, my friends. I know you guys have been submitting book authors that you guys have a preference for. So some of those preferences may be coming to a book club, AFT book club near you. Randi, take it away.
Thank you. And there is a great question. I don't know if our author can see it in the chat already. About the relationship between Haiti and the Dominican Republic and how that may affect Haitian identity. And I just raise it that way because, there's one of the things I love about the series that we're doing is we're not doing a series about banned books. We're doing a series as important as fighting against banned books may be, and it is. And we're not doing a series about distributing books, as important as that is. And we are about to distribute our 10th millionth book in the work that we've done with First Book and with Reading Opens the World. This is a different process that we're doing here. And I want to just say thank you to Kelly and to Leo and to Angela and to Share My Lesson and the others who have been involved with this. This is about the celebration of knowledge and authors and having really an intimate gathering once a month on Sunday nights with amazing authors who are sharing their insights with us and their books with us or their poems with us or their ideas with us. And that's what we're trying to do as a union of knowledge workers, as a union of workers who make a difference in the lives of others. And we have curated this in a way, and you're going to hear it in my introduction of the author that you're going to see in a minute, Edwidge Danticat, is that we have curated this in a way where we want there to be a connection between the authors we're talking to and our union and our members. And here, there's a pretty special connection because the former head of the Albert Shanker Institute, who was a 11th and 12th grade social studies teacher for a very long time in Brooklyn, New York, and myself, who was a social studies teacher for a much shorter time in Brooklyn, New York. We both taught in the same high school that this author, Edwidge Danticat, went to a few years before I taught. Imagine someone who has written, I think it's 17 books. One has won several prizes for her writing, was named the MacArthur Genius Fellow in 2009, currently the Mellon Professor of Humanities in the Department of African American and African Diaspora Studies at Columbia, is a public school graduate. And we are so proud of her. And Edwidge, everybody used to talk about you all the time at Clara Barton, as I think you know. But today we're talking about one of her books, the book called Brother, I'm Dying. And it recounts Edwidge's personal story about leaving Haiti well after her parents left Haiti when they emigrated to the United States. They escaped the then dictatorship of Papa Doc. They built a new life in what was then a very strange land. And for any of our listeners who live or work in New York, you know that Brooklyn has celebrated the many, many, many Haitian immigrants that we have in Brooklyn. I happen to live in Manhattan now, but I feel like Brooklyn is never far away from me. At age 12, Edwidge came to New York City not knowing a word of English. She learned to read and write English in the New York City public schools. And look at all that she has done since then. My wife, who's also a Barnard graduate, when I was talking about who we were having tonight, just went on and on as we were walking our dog, literally for the last hour before the book club, about how much she adores you, and reminiscing about Barnard days and everything. So, but what I want to welcome you to our family and to our book club. And I just want to say thank you for giving of your time and your spirit and the wondrous way in which you write and communicate stories. I just really want to say thank you.
Thank you. I don't know. Can you see me?
Yes, I can see you.
Okay.
We can see you and we can hear you.
Oh, okay, great. Well, thank you so much, Randi. Thank you for that beautiful introduction. And thank you, a special thank you for that connection to Clara Barton for bringing that out. And thank you to Mr. Casey. He says I can call him Leo. But it's still hard. I still think of him as Mr. Casey. And thank you for everyone watching. I mean, I think of that time at Clara Barton as such a special time, and my time in New York City public schools, where I landed from the minute that I got here from Haiti. I remember in March 1981 on a Friday, and my parents debated a little bit, should we wait till the new school year? And my dad was like, no, we went to first IS 320, Jackie Robinson Intermediate School. And then I ended up at Clara Barton because my father actually went. I mean, I was new to this country. I just did a couple of years at Jackie Robinson, and my dad went to Mr. Resnick, who was the principal then, and said, my daughter has to come to the school because she's going to be a doctor. and Mr. Resnick, and they put me like in the advanced class, which
as only Jerry would do.
Yes, just based on my dad's motivation, and in my grades, but that was actually a really big boost of confidence, as was Mr. Casey, giving me books like on the side. So all these little gestures that you teachers do, like you never know what impact that will have. So I really wanted to say an overall thank you to you, to Mr. Casey, but also to all of you devoted, dedicated teachers, and your devotion is illustrated by being here tonight.
And look, and I know we're just, the public schools, on a bad day, the public schools in New York are pretty terrific. Not all of them, not all the time, but think about who goes and who teaches, and the kind of sense of how we are dedicated to the pursuit of young people just growing into their own person.
Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Kelly Booz, and I'm the director of the American Federation of Teachers Share My Lesson. Before we begin, I want to go over a few housekeeping tips.
I think, okay.
Oops, something just happened.
Yeah.
So I would just say that, and the pride with which every time you've written a book, people just are so honored and happy. And it's just, I think that's the sense of how do we help ensure. I mean, this is also part of it. I know we're going to get to this book, but this is also part of who educators are and who you are now as an educator, and how we actually try to make knowledge alive and interesting and gripping and compelling, and then that pursuit of knowledge and the pursuit of the compassion behind it, which is what you see in every one of the books that you've written, the ones that I've read, and the ones that you've put your blood, sweat, and tears in. But that is part of education, but it's also part of why we honor authors. I mean, if you think about today, I want to just take you back to, your story and the story of the two men who raised and nurtured you, your dad and your Uncle Joseph. But it has to be, I just have to ask this question now, which is, it must be so painful to watch every day what's happening in Haiti. And it has to be in talking about, in some ways, why you decided to write this book, because you talked about in the book, we learn how your dad lived, how your Uncle Joseph lived. You talk about how they died. You talk about what they meant to you, and we all get to some of those details. But just why don't we talk a little bit about why you did this book, and then but also how you're doing with everything that's happening in Haiti right now.
Mm-hmm. I think I'll start with what's happening in Haiti right now. I think for so many of us, in the Haitian diaspora, there's such a direct connection to Haiti, especially some of us who still have family members in Haiti, which I do. And some of them have been displaced by the invasion of armed groups of their different neighborhoods. And what you have is that people who are in the capital, they might go to a different neighborhood, and then the armed groups come again. And so there's been, my relatives and a lot of some of the teachers who are on this call and others, we've had our family members are among the 300,000 people who are internally displaced currently in Haiti. So it's been a very difficult times for certainly folks in the ground, people who have chosen to stay, people who this is their home and they're staying, they don't have another passport or another a way out. So it's been a very difficult time. I mean, there seems to be some movement now. There's a presidential council that should be has been announced and is in the process of installation. The previous government is putting some resistance. So there's some steps, and some forward direction, but every day is painful because, Haiti has such an extraordinary history. It's the first Black republic it's the first place in the world where enslaved people overcame what were then the world's greatest powers and became independent. And it's a place that suffered for that independence. It had to pay a debt to France that really did not allow the country to get off the ground. There was a U.S. invasion where the U.S. took over Haiti's finances until the 1940s, and then there was a dictatorship. And then 1990, where the first democratically elected president was elected, there was a coup d'etat. So there's a very long history that I also try to trace along with the stories in the book, because my family, like a lot of Haitian families, every political everything that happens, and politically in Haiti, like anywhere else where there's trauma in the world right now, everything we see in big headlines, there are, hundreds, thousands and millions of lives affected by that. And so I tried to, in Brother, I'm Dying, also trace the history of my family through the history, at least the more recent history of Haiti and some of those events that I've just mentioned.
It's, the way in which you write, you can see what a fangirl I am, but the way in which you write is just beautiful. And you you made a decision to write a memoir. Before we go into some of the details of us, tell the assorted group of listeners why.
Well, in the memoir, in 2004, which was the 200-year anniversary of Haitian independence, there was another coup d'etat, the removal of, again, President Aristide in the second term, as Haiti was celebrating 200 years of independence. And so at that time, my uncle, who had brought my family to one of the oldest neighborhoods in Port-au-Prince called Bel Air, had to flee Haiti. At the same time, my father was dying of pulmonary fibrosis. My father, who had gone to Mr. Resnick and advocated for me.
Right.
And then I was pregnant with my oldest child. So all of these things were happening at the same time. And I had no intention really of writing a memoir. I thought I was too young to write a memoir. But when those things, like those confluence of things were happening, and I had always turned to writing for solace, for healing. And my uncle in Haiti had, during difficult times, he kept the journal, even, after he died, they gave us his briefcase, and there was a list of what he had lost, of people who he had seen die during that turbulent period. So, and he had always asked me to help him write a book, and I didn't get around to it, which was one of my regrets. So I started writing this book because he couldn't, and because my father couldn't. So I felt sort of like the duty of survivors, in a way, to tell their story, because their voices had been silenced, one by this political situation that had led to his death in two parts, in Haiti and in the US, and my father, who was silenced by a very terrible and painful disease in the end.
Mm. And it was that in some ways cacophony of events at the same exact time. How let's talk about your uncle for a second. How the story of how he had a valid tourist visa, but he asked to apply for asylum. And then he got stuck in a really cruel, horrible process. The anger that had to be brewing in you and your family had to be intense. Do you yet know what happened? There's so much that our country could do better. That is a perfect example of how we can do, so much better. And look at how we treated your uncle. So how did you process that, other than writing this amazing book about it?
Well, for those people who may not have read the full book, so my uncle, the reason the book is called Brother, I'm Dying is because my uncle, his first trip to the US was when he had cancer, and he had a medical visa. He had surgery here sponsored by some missionaries he knew. And then he would come regularly for over 40 years. And it was clear that he wanted to visit, but he was not interested in staying because he had his church and his work and school, and a school and a clinic in the neighborhood where I grew up in Haiti, a neighborhood called Bel Air. So when in 2004, he just decides, when things get very heated in the neighborhood, he couldn't stay. There were threats to his life. So he comes to Miami, where I was living. And when he gets to with his valid visa, which wouldn't expire until years after he died, he ended up dying. So he said they asked him how long he was going to stay, and his church had been burnt down, had been and he said he wanted asylum, and immediately a process went. He was 81 years old, a cancer survivor, had the surgery, and spoke with a voice box because he had had throat cancer. And so when he requested asylum, then a whole process kicked in where he was detained, his medication was taken away. And so it was over a weekend, and the family would try to find him a lawyer, and by the time they saw him on Monday at a hearing, he was very ill. But then he felt ill, started vomiting through the trach hole during the hearing. Mm-hmm. And then he was accused by a medic of faking that illness.
Oh, and
so by the time he was taken to the county hospital, he died chained to, in the prison ward of the county hospital, chained to his bed. So yeah, we were, it was very disheartening. And because he also had this very long life, when I was talking about this span of history that began, like he was a boy during the US occupation in Haiti. So he used to tell these stories, like these terrible stories of seeing Marines mistreat Haitians in the 1930s. And then there he died, and they're like in the custody of the US government in Miami. So that also, it was a very painful, circularity, that also highlighted so many broader issue than a personal family story.
Exactly right. And on some levels, we think about what's happening right now in terms of this whole process. I mean, when people seek asylum, it is because there's something really dangerous happening. Mm. And it is something that it is something that we have to do a better job at. And one of the things that we're constantly thinking about is, how do we do that? I mean, with DACA students, I'm sure that this is something that you think about a lot, given your position and given where you are. But this is one of the biggest pieces of really unfinished business that I think we have as Americans, and yet at the same time, look at what's going on in terms of how the other side is demonizing migrants and immigrants. And so when in reading it, I just kept thinking, oh my God, think about today, and think about, I really couldn't stop getting the story out of my head. And the fact that the question really is, again, what is it that we can do today that actually ensures that this never happens? Telling the truth, telling stories, but how do we also make sure that this doesn't happen again? What happened to your uncle?
I mean, the sad thing is that on some level it keeps happening, because just as what you're saying, we dehumanize the people who come, and we, at the same time, we ignore the root causes, which, for example, in the case of Haiti, you have these like hundreds of thousands of weapons of war flooding a country with ammunition from Miami, from the US, from these states. That's at least a beginning cause, right? That now the capital is overtaken by these armed groups who, yes, are funded by business elites, by politicians, but also the weapons keep flooding in. And we have this issue in other parts of the region, right? So at the same time, when people come, we're like, it's an invasion. It's without addressing kind of our, like, this country's part in the reasons that they're coming. But one of the reasons too, the book, when I first started writing it, I thought it would be a good manual for empathy, right? I thought, wow, because I kept thinking, we were given the there's an organization called Americans for Immigrant Justice that got the documents from the government. Initially, they were heavily redacted, and then gradually we got more and more of the details of, and then, it occurred to me that if that person, that the first person my uncle saw at the airport, right, that officer, if that person had thought, this is an old man who's 81 years old, if there was like a compassion in that some compassion in that one moment, the trajectory of that story would have been very different.
Completely different.
Yeah, and so what I often think, as teachers with children, just like one person can really, that's always emphasized for me. And then when the book came out and I testified before Congress, I would speak to professional groups. And that's really what I wanted to emphasize, that, your one humane and thoughtful reaction can really save somebody's life. But first, that means seeing them as human, as like you, right? And that's one of the, some people can't make that reach because they've been so, the stigmatization, the villainization, there's been so much of that, and more coming apparently too.
Yeah. I mean, I think your point, and then we're going to get to your dad, but the point of how the point of education is also really important. Education is not simply learning to read and write or compute or, the academics, or learning is also this process of how we either maintain or grow a sense of humanity and common decency to and with each other. And I do think the divisiveness in the country right now is a huge issue against pluralism and against that sense that we are all this, huge humanity and sense of all of us being together in one place, trying to create freedom and opportunity. And that diversity is actually a strength, not a weakness. But we have a lot more to do in terms of making that case. Ro Khanna said something to me a few weeks ago that has just constantly played back in my mind like an old 45 record over and over and over again, which is, we do not do a good enough job in this country of convincing others how important diversity is and how important the fabric of all of our different identities coming in together actually creates freedom. And that is a culturally beautiful thing, not something to be afraid of. And I bet if we did more of what de Tocqueville had said years and years and years ago to do, we would be in a very different space and time. Mm-hmm.
No, absolutely. And I think just that sense of community, because, diversity now is, so it's the next, it's like, critical race theory, DEI, and the way these things are flipped to, again, divide, is growing, so that even the most humane way of framing that can seem hollow, right, to people now, and that's the point, like, right, that's the idea, because it's very easy to convince people that all of their problems are caused by the newcomers, right, by the foreigners, but I think that's also the power of literature, and that's why we see, I was living in Florida for the past 20 plus years, and you see this gradual move towards the banning of books, towards erasing African American history, erasing, because I think in 2020 it was made so clear how literature allows us to step into the body of other people. And I'm not saying it can solve all our problems, but at least it can help us grow that sense of community, and that sense of this level of empathy that made young people act.
Yeah. And you just made a better case than I have ever made for why we do these book clubs and what we do in terms of making sure that our members can actually have a different connection to, and lots of hearts on that one, a different connection with an author like you. I mean, think about the books that get banned. I mean, in Florida is ground zero. Really, for elementary school kids, you're gonna ban a book about Anne Frank and ban a book about Ruby Bridges. Like, why would you do that? It's to stop the empathy of young people who grew up differently, but they're young people. And so why wouldn't you want kids to know about Anne Frank or about Ruby Bridges and the struggles that they went through as young people? And and I think that you're right, that it is that fear of the other, that fear of knowledge. But I want to go back to your dad, because I think and having the beginning of this, the story of him going to see Jerry Resnick. Now, for those, you call him Mr. Resnick, both Leo Casey and I call him Jerry. Just so you know, the first day I ever taught at Clara Barton High School, Mr. Resnick walks into my classroom. I am completely mortified and completely fearful, because I'm like, this is the first day I'm teaching. And he walks into my classroom. He's like, he says to me a few years later, well, I just love watching you teach. So I'm like, I know, but it was the first day. I was really nervous. I thought I was a failure. but that's, that. So the story that you told about your dad and Mr. Resnick, and, and him placing you in those classes in the AP or the higher classes, it doesn't surprise me. But there had to be something also really special about your dad, that he could figure out Clara Barton High School, great school, it was a career tech ed school, vocational school at that point, but we fought to keep it open, but a really great storied school. So tell us a little bit about your dad.
Yeah, my dad was, I didn't really know my dad until I came to New York at age 12, because he left when I was 2. But I was the only daughter, so there always that very special relationship with Dad, and that story, of him going to Clara Barton. And I guess I was my area school, my zone school was Erasmus Hall.
Yeah.
But he thought that Clara Barton would be better suited for me, and that the fact that he made this case, I feel like, that's really driven my parenting, because I always feel like now, like, I don't know I think my life would have been drastically different had he not made that choice, like, to go there. And then I was put in this program called Peak, which was like the advanced class there, which made so many more things possible for me, including, I also have to shout out to Miss Finn, who was my guidance counselor at Clara Barton, and I had never heard of Barnard when I, or even like the possibility of coming to this university certainly wouldn't have been available to me without the whole framework that they had around Peak at Clara Barton. So, my dad was just a cheerleader, and he would always say to me and my brothers, and 2 of my brothers are teachers, and my third brother works in IT in a school. But he would always say to us, if I had had these opportunities that you all have, my dad was a cab driver, a deacon at his church, just a really loving person, but was very focused on like possibility. And I think, he had grown up during the dictatorship in Haiti. He was undocumented for a very long time here. He and my mom were both undocumented when they got here, and it took them a while to get their documents. So it just was, it was always all about education for him. That to him always felt like my mom too is like how we would advance.
Yeah. So you just talked about your parenting, and so tell us a bit about your kids, and are they, and just give us a sense of your life today.
Well, I have two daughters. One is a college student, and one is in high school. And so after living in Florida for 2 decades, I've just recently moved to New York, and I am on the campus where I was in college. I'm at across the street at Columbia, but I went to college at Barnard. So I feel a little bit like I'm in a time warp. And sometimes I think I see a younger version of myself walking around, but they just look more, those young people look much more self-assured than I was, because this was in spite of growing up in the city, and I think, over the years, I was in a program called HEOP, and I would come and talk to students who were also going through the program. And it's hard for folks to imagine. I think the teachers know not so much, but that you can be a child who grows up in Brooklyn public schools, and this is a whole different world to you. Like, I didn't know this world at all. And so it might as well have been like out of the state for me to be in this environment. But I was very lucky. I had a lot of support here also to sort of gradually make the transition, to learn to study differently, all these things that it takes a lot. Like, so when your students leave you in high school, some of them, right, some of them will be first generation, the first in their family to go to college. And like, just this world will be as new to some of them as it was to me.
It is, and I chuckled when you said Miss Finn, because so many times I went to Miss Finn to help me with a situation, and she was remarkable. But that transition to college is really hard. I mean, it's hard when you're a second or third generation or fourth generation person going to college, because of all the different exigencies these days, including unsustainable student debt. But first generation, and I remember a couple of years ago, some students who were just starting college saying to me, because we represent K-12 and also higher ed and also healthcare professionals. We represent actually 70% of the organized staff in higher education. So we spent a lot of time in that liminal space with students and young adults. And even the notion that, okay, we don't have free lunch anymore. We don't have free transportation anymore. All of those costs, the sense of if you're going to stay in a dorm, what that means. And these kids were saying to me, we really had to actually learn from others. What are we going to be packing to be, our first year? And you just, this notion of how do you help create a sense of home and a sense of community, so that young people don't feel otherized, is so important in terms of that first year and those first few months. And Barnard is really different. Like it is, we live all the way up in Inwood right now, but there's lots of people in New York City who like never go to another borough. So yeah. And so we had a couple of questions here. And so welcome back to New York. We love that you're here.
Thank you. Thank you.
New York's gain is Florida's loss. We have another professor of ours who has been one of our leaders at UFF, the University of Paul Ortiz is now going to my alma mater, the School of Industrial Labor Relations at Cornell, to teach labor history. So he is, he and I were together a couple of weeks ago at Brooklyn College, and we were just, talking about what's also happening in terms of Florida, which is because of all of the undermining of education, they're losing the tremendous educators who's the Northeastern colleges that you're going to. It's their gain, and it's the students who you are teaching and he will be teaching. I want to go back to there's been a couple of questions in the chat just about people are really, the questioners or the people who are listening are really just very intrigued about your thoughts on whether one was, can we learn from, what happened in Haiti, how not to use power in that kind of way. I think that question was, about America and what America did in terms of Haiti. And then also just your thoughts about, Haiti and Dominican Republic and is there a way that the Dominican Republic could be doing more or could be or just really opining on the relationship between the two right now? So those were the two questions I saw in the chat, and you can take and the one of them was like, I'm so honored to be here with you here today. There's a lot of love for you in the chat, but those are the two that I saw.
All right. Thank you for that's kind for the love. I think there's a way that those two can actually be combined, right? Because U.S. policy in the region also has overlapped with the Dominican Republic. So then when there was the U.S. occupation of Haiti from 1915 to 1934, there was also a chunk of that time where the U.S. occupied the whole island. And part of it was based on, these commercial interests, the sugar interest, and a lot of, there are parts of the border between Haiti and the Dominican Republic that was designated by the U.S. And there's Michelle Worker has a really interesting book on that relationship called Wycock's Fight and there's a part of it where she talks about like sometimes the border was moved because the sugar processing was on the Dominican side, but the workers was on the Haitian side, right? And there was all of that. And then there was, so based on where you are, there are these historical scars where for the Dominican Republic that a lot of people have, for them, it's that post-revolution period in Haiti. And for the Haitian side, it's the massacre. But if you go to a border town, often amongst the people themselves, there's a kind of fluidity, right? Where there's a back and forth, there are market days. But it is election time in the Dominican Republic and the current, given the current situation in Haiti, the current president has really sort of like been very kind of just extra, as the young people would say, in a way that sort of further like marginalizes Haiti. And there's been this tension more recently over this canal that Haitians have been building to help irrigate this plain, right? At the same time that in Dominican Republic, they've built a bunch of other things, but it was really, there was a lot of fuss made about like this one Haitian canal. So there are these moments of tensions, but there are also beautiful moments of solidarity among artists, among neighbors. And so I think that's also worth emphasizing. There are people who are in the human rights community who work together with Haitians and Haitians of Dominican descent. But it's a relationship that's been sort of used by leaders of different times for their privileges, right? Especially around election time. And in the U.S. also, I mean, there's some puzzling, not so puzzling because it sort of sometimes follows in line. For example, you have this man, Guy Philippe, who now has gotten with armed gangs and wants to be president of Haiti, who was in the U.S. prison, right, for narco trafficking. And mysteriously, bam, he's deported to Haiti, like 6 year into a 9-year term. And so these kinds of things are just almost like, along with, the policies of like supporting coups or supporting this prime minister recently for so long until they couldn't support him anymore. But there are things that are so blatantly, just like vicious in a way, like throwing this guy in the mix all of a sudden of a very difficult situation. Things of that nature just kind of are like consistent with this policy.
Yeah. It is so, again, it's, there's a lot of heartbreak in the world, but it's so heartbreaking. And trying to figure out how the United States should be helping as opposed to constantly probably worsening the situation over the last 100 years. And what do you do to now, what do you do to now help, after all of that? I want to ask you one other question, which is, and then just, whatever your final thoughts are. I've just been so honored in your presence and honored by us having this conversation. There's a sense that the best writers are people who have seen struggle and sacrifice, who have been in the margins themselves, and who can see pain and express it, but do it in the kind of empathic, caring way that you've been speaking this whole hour and that your books exemplify. For those people who are listening today or watching us today or who may want to write, could you give them some advice about how because what you do is you don't make people feel bad about themselves. You make people see, though, the pain and see possibility in it and in a future. So give some of these aspiring writers or thinkers some advice about how to do that and how to write.
I think, and thank you for those kind words. I think it's just to allow yourself to be vulnerable, right? It's that vulnerability, which is that you have to allow, and that because I think, I have a book called Create Dangerously, which is about creating, which talks about writers creating under political strain. But I think now in this kind of environment that we live in, there's also like an emotional danger, and that vulnerability, because when people are vulnerable, and if you're vulnerable in public, if you're vulnerable online, you're sort of like opening yourself to all kinds of different things. But I think when I read something in which someone is being vulnerable, I think to myself, they trust me, right? And so it's that building of trust, I think, as both a reader, as both a writer, as both teachers, to trust, right? And as teachers, I think, to make a space for that, right? If you're in what your students are creating, to be able to be open to receiving that. And I know we're all, as a teacher now myself, I know we're busy and it's a lot of emotional labor, but I think that kind of vulnerability to both be able to share it and to receive it is what I think makes that art that you're describing from these places where really, I think in the case of Haiti, where there's such beautiful literature, beautiful art, I think we would trade all the pain for it's not like we want to have the pain for the literature, but if you have the pain, it has to come out somehow. And I think there's a kind of cry toward some of the literature that we call like engagé, like engaged literature too. And it comes through song, it comes through paintings, it comes, in Haitian life. So I would say like that vulnerability, that being able to be open. And there's two, I think, other questions. What am I working on now? Which of my works? So high school seniors, I think, actually Brother, I'm Dying has been taught in a lot of high schools, along with Kurt Crack. And right now I'm working on it's done. I have a collection of essays called We're Alone that will be out in September. And it is about like this kind of vulnerability I'm talking about, where like when I was little, where people told stories and I didn't think I was too shy to perform stories, but I would read a book and I would say to myself, I'm alone with this. I didn't know what was happening, but I felt like I was alone with the writer. So that book is a collection of essays in that spirit. So that's what I have out next.
Fantastic. So, any last words for us?
Well, first of all, I want to thank you all. I want to thank you, Randi. I want to thank Mr. Casey. I want to thank Kelly for organizing it, for inviting me. I want to thank all the teachers who have spent this hour with us and who are really in the trenches every single day with the students. I have a great deal of admiration for all of you. I am here because of wonderful teachers. So I commend you and I thank you. I thank you for not just for tonight, but for everything you do. Keep doing it. It's not an easy job, but we're deeply grateful to you.
And we are deeply, deeply, deeply grateful to you, Edwidge, for not only spending this last hour with us. I see Dr. Casey has gotten on as well. But just the work that you've done and the empathy, and at the same time the truth of what your books exemplify. And we're so delighted that you're up in the city in which Leo and I both live, in one of the schools that we have lots of people who we know hang out there. But we just wish for you so many more years of teaching all of us how to find righteousness and empathy in literature, in knowledge, and in teaching. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all so much.
unless you think your role as a teacher doesn't matter, you have Mr. Casey here. How many years ago were you actually, and you still call him Mr. Casey, how many years ago did you actually teach Edwidge, Leo?
Over 40 years, I think.
So to all of our teacher friends who are part of this book club event, or if you're, not a teacher, but you support teachers, obviously you're here, you guys make a huge difference years and years and years later. So thank you for that. Leo, do you have any last words before I close things out? Oh, you're on mute, my friend. Leo, you're on mute.
Yep, Leo is talking and he's on mute.
Yeah, we can't hear you, but he's showing an Edwidge book. So I'm sure whatever you're saying is beautiful, Mr. Casey. I'm going to call you Mr. Casey from now on.
He's laughing.
Okay. Yes. Okay. You're laughing, which is great. Okay. So we're going to close this out. I did put in the chat, and I will put this again. We have our May book club event with Charles M. Blow. So please, if you haven't registered for that, he will be talking about his book, Fire Shut Up in My Bones. So we're excited for Charles Blow. And then this is not live yet, but it will be this coming week. We have our June book club. We'll take a break over the course of the summer, though I know during our AFT convention, we'll be doing something about our AFT book club, and then we'll be back in the fall. But I know a lot of people were actually, I think it's getting blurry. A lot of people have been talking about banning books and some of the stuff. There's a book that's coming out next month by Mike Hicksonbaugh. He's a co-creator of the South Lakes podcast. And it will be called They Came for Our Schools. So if you haven't listened to the podcast from Mike Hicksonbaugh, he's an NBC contributor reporter. It's very powerful. So please stay tuned. We will shoot you an email when that is opening up for people to do it. I see people asking about additional poll questions. So let me push a couple of those again so you can get your professional development credits. So Leo, Edwidge, Randi, thank you so much. I love these book club events. They've been so fun, and just fun to see how engaging these conversations are. And I learn something new every time. And Edwidge, thank you. This is so great. Leo, thank you. Leo and Randi, thank you for bringing her to us and to our community.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.